Okay, we ready to roll?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay.
So starting off, since early in your career, I think it was 1989, you studied religious involvement. We
Right.
just want to know what motivated you to start studying religion, and how did that influence your other interests? Because I know you do a lot with stress processes.
Right.
Stress related.
I was a big stress guy for all the way up until 1989. You know, I was like, that was my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually, when I did my first community survey, it was on stress and health in older adults. And I had nothing on religion, absolutely nothing. And every time the interviewers would come back to my office and go, there's another one that said I rely on religion. And I remember I thought, oh, I don't want to go there. You know, those people that do that are weird. They got, personal agenda to sell and and on and on. But what can I say? I'm one of the geeks now. And I got into it for that. I avoided it for a long time, and then it found me. I mean, and I'll tell you just a little quick story, but I wrote my first paper in 1989, as you noticed, and it was just secondary data analysis, no big deal. But I get this call from National Institutes of Health, and they go, we're having a meeting on religion and health, and you're an expert. I said, wait a minute. I've written one paper. I'm not an expert. Oh, but you should come. So, okay. So then I went there, and it was about 300 people. And they said, well, we're going to have breakout sessions in the afternoon. And one of the breakout sessions is going to be on how to measure religion. And they said, where's Neal? And I said, I'm back here. And they go, Neal, you're going to chair this. I said, oh, really? I didn't even know. You know, I mean, that was, so anyway, for probably 2 years after that, I chaired this group, and we put together measures that could be inserted in epidemiologic surveys on religion. And that's that Fetzer group stuff. I don't know if you ever saw reference to that. Yeah, I chaired that group. So anyway, that got me into it. And then I just got fascinated by it. I mean, it's such an integral part of life. And I guess as, I get older, you start thinking about things that are, I mean, it does make you think. So yeah, that's the long and short of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great. Well, that's a great segue into our next few questions. We really want to talk more about your experience in writing that book, which, the Book of the Measures has been, I'm sure, as you know, has made a huge impact in the field. It's been widely cited. And I guess, what would you describe, how would you describe that experience working with group, and what, especially your role in working on this project? And sorry if you hear all this noise, it's the early morning construction that's always happening.
Oh, okay.
I guess what was the main intent in undertaking this effort in writing the Book of Measures? And were you satisfied with what you produced? And in terms of the impacts, like what were you hoping that it would have?
Well, I wrote it just because I really believe in the social basis of religion. I think you just can't talk about religion without talking about people, plural. And I know it's not that way in all faiths, but certainly in the United States, it's all about congregations and relationships that people develop in them. And I felt that was really not given any major attention. I mean, people kind of asked a few questions about it, but there was nothing serious about it. And so I use that just initial point of departure for getting into stuff that I had done just prior to that. It's funny. I wrote a grant to National Institute on Aging, and I said, I really want to study religion, but I don't know what it is, and I want to do 3 years of qualitative work before, and then develop good measures from that, before I really get into it. And I can remember my project officer said, it'll never be funded. They don't fund scale development projects. I said, I don't care. It's what's needed. Guess what? Got funded the first time through. And for 3 years, I did amazing amounts of quality. I did focus groups. I did 100 and I think 13 in-depth interviews. I did all kinds of stuff. And I actually developed a tight set of measures, many of which were social support. That gets me back to that book. And so I just said, I really want to pull it all together in one place and say, this is an area in the field of religion and health that hasn't got its due yet. And I wanted to see if I could just get that out there on the stage a little more clearly. And I said, well, how do I do that? And I said, well, you can do it, especially if you provide people with the measures of the things you're talking about. So I can just say, don't just talk about spiritual support, say, here are questions you can use to measure that. And so I just went through every dimension, the major dimensions of social relationships in the church, and had measures for each one and talked about, theoretically why they're relevant for health and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. I'd never written a book before. And no, because public health, right? They don't like books, do they?
No.
No, it's peer-reviewed articles, right?
Right.
And it's, I can remember it when I was at Michigan. I chaired the tenure and promotion committee for 4 years, and I saw every tenure and promotion from all 5 departments in the School of Public Health. And whenever a book came up, everybody just went, this is just not, get serious. Where's your peer-reviewed articles? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I said, but I can't call myself a scholar, a professor, unless I write a book. I said, I got to have it all. I want to understand the whole thing. So I wrote that book, and now I'm writing another one. I'm halfway through it, and it's going to be it's very different than that one, but it just I enjoy doing it. It's I enjoy the freedom. Lots of times I've always just bitched at journal editors because they go, you've got 2,000 words. And I go, get out of here, 2,000 words. All you can do is put your methods in there, because that's what, if it's an empirical paper, that's all the room you got. And what that means is it cuts out the theory. And it's like, oh man, cut the heart out of it, And so when you write a book, it's really amazing. And you've got not as much room as you want, but you've got a lot more room. And it's kind of funny when you first start writing a book. It's almost like deer in the headlights. It's like, oh my God, I got to fill 300 pages. What am I gonna say? But it filled up fast enough.
Yeah, I like your perspective on what you said about the process of writing a book versus writing an empirical paper. And depending on what journal you're submitting, there's so much focus on methodology where you don't really get to delve into the conceptual frameworks of why you're doing the study, the underpinnings. And I really appreciate that you said that. And you mentioned you're in the middle of writing a book. Are you able, or can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, this one is real different. I told my wife, I said, at this stage in my career, this is you guys are too young to remember, but when the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper's, do you remember that? It was so different. I mean, it was just unique from start to finish, and it just blew the whole music industry away. And I said, this is my Sgt. Pepper. So I just start off, and I just said, I wrote all in the first person. I wanted the authors, the readers, to feel who I am. I want them to look beyond the words to the man that wrote them. And so I said, there's 3 things that I really want to do. And the first thing is, I want to tell you how I actually practice my craft. Not the BS, you develop a hypothesis, you gather some data, you test your hypothesis, you write it up. No, I wanted to talk about it, warts and all. Talk about the dead ends, the times I was wrong, the things that I didn't understand, how I even reversed my position at sometimes, only because after much deeper thought, I could arrive at better thinking. So that's one thing. then the second thing is, and this is where I'm going next, is it's kind of built around communities of faith. And I don't know if you know much of the, there's good theological stuff on it and good sociological stuff on it. And when you read that, it says that something unique happens when people get together in a church, that the whole becomes larger than the sum of the parts. People stop thinking about I and start thinking about we. And there's something almost mystical at that level. If you read, there's two different sources on it. One, I don't know, you probably never heard of this guy. Guy's name is Bonhoeffer. You ever heard of Bonhoeffer?
No.
Probably not, no. He was a pastor who was hung by the Nazis because he was involved in the plot to try to assassinate Hitler. But he wrote a lot about this. And Durkheim, I imagine you have heard Durkheim, right? And he writes pretty much the same thing. And so I said, we really got to really get down and understand this. So in this book, I've got a chapter that lays out all the different things that a community of faith is likely to involve. And then this mystical thing that I can't really get my fingers on yet. And I call for a very detailed qualitative study to say, let's find out. Just like I did way back when in the 80s, I'm going to return to that. And that's written into this. And then the third thing I'm doing in this book, and this one I can't explain to you unless you really understand latent variable modeling, but I have a rather unique way of addressing some very fundamental problems with that. So I rolled it all together. I've been offered a contract by one press, and I'm waiting on a better press. And they're telling me that this looks pretty good. They sent it out for peer review, and the peer reviews have been amazing. They're just lovely. They're wonderful. And they're going, nobody but you could have written this book. And in a way, it's true, because this is my swan song. I mean, I've worked for all these decades. What have I learned? What have I learned really? And I put all kinds of stuff in there. And I'm on chapter 6 now, so out of 11. So it's kind of half done, and it's got to go through some revisions and stuff. But it's been, I like this one better than the first one. But and the reception has been better, I think. But who knows? It's funny. You saw my study. I sit here. It's very quiet. There's nobody here. I cook this stuff up, and I send it out. It goes out over the wire, and you don't really know how people are going to react. I mean, you think you do. When I first put this second book together, I contacted Jeff Levin, because he's a old friend from way back. I said, Jeff, I'm really coloring outside the lines. Do I have my head up my butt here, or is this something worth pursuing? And he wrote back, he said, I think this is terrific. You got to do it. So that's where I am. And I'm giving it a shot in between going to school and some of the other stuff,
You're balancing a lot.
Well, no, that's actually not all. In fact, I did that landmark spirituality and health survey, and we got refunded to go back and do what I call a mortality study. You've got data at time 1 from everybody, and then you wait a little while and you go back, and some of the folks die, and you look and see if you could use the time 1 data to predict who died. And so far, the literature on mortality and religion is almost, that's not fair, but largely loaded towards church attendance only. And we've got to get past that. I mean, come on, and let's pull that apart and find out what's really going on there. So that's what we're going to do. That's in the field right now, and causing headaches, of course, as they always do. It's funny. I heard a colleague of mine a long time ago said, these big grants are like getting hit with a golden brick, and it's true, because if anything can go wrong, it will, and stuff you could imagine going wrong will go wrong. And it just, they don't teach you this in graduate school. You know, it's really funny. You know, you learn it, God knows how, you know, the hard way, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to the next question I was going to ask you. And
Okay.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. You've led many grants, several on religion and spirituality,
Right.
including from the NIA to John Templeton Foundation.
Right.
We don't learn this in grad school, like you mentioned. Could you
No.
say a bit more about how those grants and your experience on conducting them, and what some of the lessons that we could, as future investigators, what can we learn from you in this process?
What I would recommend, and it's what I did, I learned grant writing on the bended knee of my good friend Jersey Liang, who was fabulous at getting money. I mean, this guy was amazing. He got, NIH gives out what they call a merit award. Have you ever heard of that? And that means that if you do some really good grant work, they give you this fast track into getting 5 more years of funding. He got not only one, he got 2 of them. And I've never heard anybody getting 2. But anyway, the point is, find somebody that knows what they're doing. And you know, don't sit there and go, gosh, I just think I'll write a grant and send it in. I mean, you're going to be spinning your wheels, reinventing the wheel, and just, you know, hook up. And that's why I would recommend postdoctoral fellowships. You know, once you get out, find a good, you know, group of mentors that'll really help you with stuff like this, because that's how you learn. You know, because no, they don't teach you this in graduate school, and there's a lot more they don't teach you. But you know, it's just amazing. You know, students tend to think, well, I've got my PhD, I'm done. And I go, no, not quite. You know, you're actually just getting started. PhD is just a license to hunt, and now you're out in the hunt. You know what I mean? That's what you're doing. And I'm still learning. I mean, you know, this book stuff is new to me. And now actually what I'm trying to do, in fact, what I was doing this morning before I logged on with you guys, is I'm sniffing around to see if I can raise a little money to pay myself while I write this book. You know, why not? Do you know what I mean? And
yeah, book adventures all the time.
Yeah. So they're small, they're relatively smaller grants. And so I've got a few feelers out there. People seem pretty interested, and I'll see, you know, and you know, you got to be thick skinned. It's not for the weak of heart, you know. Let me give you, if I can, just share a story with you. When I first got to Michigan, you know, it was like, I was like deer in the headlights. I mean, that place is such an incredibly fast track. And, you know, grants are so essential there. When I told you I chaired the tenure promotion committee, we always had an annual meeting with the new incoming assistant professors. And one of the associate deans would come in with me, and he goes, and he always start the meeting the same way. He goes, you know, you're here because you want to learn how do you get tenured, and that's why Neal's here, because he's in charge of that committee. He goes, let me make one thing clear right from the outset: no grant, no tenure. Any questions? So it was like, yikes. So anyway, the reason I'm telling you that is because when I got there, my first 4 grants were shot down. And I remember saying to my wife, I don't think I belong here. I just, you know, I'm missing something. I just can't, you know, turn the corner on this. So maybe it's time for me to move on to someplace else. And I had 1 more grant to write. And I thought, well, let me try this. And it got funded, and I think I went on a tear and probably had 7 or 8 in a row that got funded after that. So it's just, you know, hang in there. Do you know what I mean? And be a little thick-skinned and pick yourself up and dust yourself off and get right back in the fight, you know, and because like I tell my students, I said, there's only one guarantee in this business. They go, what's that? I say, you know what you're going to get if you don't submit the grant? Nothing. That's the guarantee. Anything less than that, who knows?
I think about because you mentioned this as you wrote four grants, and then on the fifth one was when you got it, and then
Right.
after that you were awarded after that, and
Right.
I think about the tipping point, right,
Right.
and how and sometimes that tipping point allows us to be on the other side of the hill.
Yes.
What would you say would be like the tipping point in terms of writing about spirituality and religion in order to gain funds for your projects?
I'm not quite sure. Tell me a
So
little bit more about
how did
the
you, what
phrase
was,
tipping point.
okay, so um, what was the writing? What was the difference between the first four and the fifth one that you wrote that allowed you to start rolling through and getting the securing the funding? That's what I mean by that.
Well, I think if nothing else, it was the experience,
Mm,
where you send it in. Think about it. Let's put it in a forum that is more familiar for you. Uh, I assume you've gone through the publication process at least a little bit.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened with your first article?
I got denied.
Of course,
Yeah.
and you probably, if you were like me, you probably got creamed, right? Not
Yeah.
only,
They're like, no, this is not a good fit. Sorry.
that's right. That's right. And so what do? You just say, oh my goodness. So you try again.
Yeah.
And and you gain a little more experience each time. You start to look at what the reviewers are telling you. What is it that they think is missing? And then another part of it is, and boy, this is hard to get to, is just, there's let me put it this way. There's two things that I think are important when you write a grant. One is, can you do it? Can you pull off what you say? Because actually I got on the review panel at the National Institute on Aging, and I did it because I really wanted to find out how these guys think. But I thought, you sign up for 4 years, and I went, oh, I don't want to do that. So I cut a deal with them 2 years. I'll review for 2 years and then I'm out of there, because I figured I'd learn everything I could then. And I learned two things. One thing is that I almost literally went around the room. There's like about 16 people. I just asked each person, I said, how long does it take you to make up your mind about the proposal? And you're either behind it or you want to sink it. How long does it take you to get to that point? And you know what the answer was? About 3 minutes.
Wow. I was going to say like 30 seconds, but
Yeah, no, I mean, just real fast. I mean, just real quick. And what that tells you is you got to come out of the starting block swinging.
Mm.
Wow.
Right here, right as you get started. And then the second thing I found out was the thing they're concerned about is, can the horse run? You say you're going to do this survey. Do you really have the wherewithal to do that? And the way you deal with that when you're younger and less established is you load yourself up with co-investigators. So you put on these seasoned people, that you say, well, I've got Dr. Smith here, and she's run 15 community surveys, and if she's going to help me pull this off. And so that's the other thing I do. So anyway, tipping point, that kind of gets to it a little bit.
Oh, I think that's perfect. And I love the analogy to sports and baseball. Like, you got to go out there swinging. I really like that. And it speaks to the challenges that one faces in one's career. And so the next question I have for you is, how would you compare the challenges faced by religion and health field in the late 90s to the one we face today? You're back in school and you're learning you're taking more classes. And what do you think were the major shift in trends? What from your experience, where are we going in the future with spirituality and religion?
Well, a couple things. One is, back in the early 80s, there was, I'm sure you've seen the articles where Jeff Levin used to say the R word. As soon as somebody sees the R word, religion, you're sunk. And there was a lot of, I suppose, prejudice against it, that academic prejudice against it. They didn't think it was a real science and all the rest of that crap. So once people got out there and started doing really decent work, and there is some really good work out there, that gradually began to change, and religion found itself integrated. And what's really cool is, if you think about it, what's the shortest list in the world? And the answer to that is disciplines that aren't doing something with religion. Think about it. Medicine, nursing, public health, sociology, psychology, social work, humanities, of course, all these fields, anthropology, all these fields are doing it now. And that's a good thing, because what it shows is the versatility of it. So where do I think it's going in the future? A couple things. One is, and I think this is especially relevant for people in public health, we're getting a little more biomedical. There's this, let's get accepted by the real doctors. You know what I mean? And the way you do that is with biomarkers. So when I did the landmark spirituality health survey, we actually got a whole range of biomarkers, and I wrote a number of papers on those. And that was just a way of, that was brand new world for me. And that was just a way of getting my feet wet, because, you can't argue with that stuff. When you say religion's related to lower levels of, bad cholesterol, it's a little hard to turn that around and say higher levels of bad cholesterol make you less religious. It doesn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? So the direction of causality becomes more clear. You never prove it, but you sure do get a lot closer. And I think that that's all very useful. And that's also why I think this mortality thing we're doing now, again, a little hard to argue with it. I don't, see how you could reverse causality on a more, religion and mortality study, same thing. So I think that's one big direction. And then for me, just my own personal bias is, I'm going to see if I can really get this communities of faith community, off the ground. And I don't know, maybe I can pull it off, maybe I can't, but it's worth a try.
Yeah, I really love that you mentioned communities of faith. In Memphis, there's this Memphis Interfaith Coalition and they address the different determinants of health, education, economics, socioeconomic status, and the work that comes out of their community of faith is fantastic and beautiful. And how would you say that it would be similar, communities of faith are similar to community of practices, and how can we incorporate what we already know with community of practices and coalitions and integrate them with faith?
Well, I think a lot of people are actually already doing that. A lot of congregations have formal programs to do all kinds of stuff, lower, blood pressure and get people to eat better. And, so I think a lot of that's already happening. I think what we need to do is two things. One is what is unique about doing that in a church? And part of the answer to that is you can access, especially minority group members, especially African Americans, through the church easier than you can other ways. At least that's what some people have argued. And then I think the second thing is we need to say, what is it that's unique about what we're doing? What can we just go to the Elks Club and offer these same services, or is there something special that's going on in communities of faith? And I'm betting on something special is happening, but we got to find it, right? And
I agree.
Yeah, we got to find what it is. But see, that's great. Sometimes when there's nothing out there, you get freaked out. You go, oh my God, what do I do and where do I start? And I just think, don't worry about it. Just start anywhere, just, and above all else, just listen to your gut. Do you know what I mean? Just what's in your heart. You're getting into this because something about it has appealed to you at a pretty deep level. Well, what is it? What is that exactly? And what has brought you there? And start there and pursue that and just see where it leads you. And you really have to, and it could be dead ends. And that's why I'm writing my book the way I'm writing it now. Is to say, boy, if I had a nickel for every dead end I had, I'd be a wealthy guy. You know what I mean? It's like, I really have. Oh my goodness, I've had laid more than a few eggs, shall I say, and I lay them out in this book. I thought I was over here. Nope, I was dead wrong. Thought it was over there. Nope. And I think it's time somebody started saying that. It's funny. I guess this is the analogy I give you to help you understand that. When you put your Vita together, what do? You list all your papers that were accepted for publications. Why don't we list the ones that were rejected? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Why don't you list those too? I mean, because isn't that a more honest reflection of what it is that you're doing? And I still get papers rejected all the time. It's just, in fact, it's funny. I had this one paper that I saved for my doctoral students, and they'd come in and they'd say, oh my God, I got rejected. What am I going to do? And I said, look, I want you to read this paper. And then there are 3 reviews that came with this paper. Same paper now, same words. Reviewers read the same words. The first reviewer goes, this is absolutely groundbreaking. The next reviewer goes, meh, meh. And the third one goes, this is crap and you're crap. Do you know what I mean? And I say, how could 3 different people read exactly the same words and come to these conclusions? And the answer is, it really is the luck of the draw. It's the editor pulls somebody out of the hat, and so again, you got to be tough-skinned. You just have to, take your licks and go kick the can or whatever, and come back in and do it again.
Well, Neal, this is my reality this week. So we're touching a lot on like rejection and thick skin, and this is my reality in dealing with the paper being rejected as of like 2 days ago. So I actually have to work on it later today. So this is very real for me.
Let me tell you a story. You guys know Harold Koenig, right? You know his work. Everybody knows Harold's work, right?
Yes.
He told me one time he got 3 papers rejected in the same day.
Oh my goodness.
Could you imagine that?
Oh.
I said, Harold, his family owns a big winery in California. I said, let me guess. I said, you didn't reach for any of that wine, did you, at that point? He's like, well, he goes, it's a little tough. So anyway, here's the point. Look at this. He's, one of the pillars of religion and health. And he's getting 3 papers rejected in a day. So that's what I'm saying. If we were really honest, we'd put our rejected papers on our Vitas, and our Vitas would be a lot thicker.
Mm-hmm.
Babe Ruth had more strikeouts than he had home runs. Does anybody talk about that? No. But should they? Yes. Why? Because it tells you something about the life.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise you see this guy and you think, oh my God, he hits a home run every time he gets up to the plate. No, he didn't. And that helps you, because when you strike out, don't worry, it happens to the best of us.
That's a great point. Again, yeah, like Andrea said, I really appreciate the analogy. So
you got this, Angela.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it's hard. There's a lot to balance.
Wasn't it we were talking about this is like review number 2 always messes it up for was it we were talking about that? I figured that I heard that this week.
Yes, we were talking, although for me it was review number 1. I'm pretty sure, and I was reading between the lines.
It's funny. Here's another thing. that's helpful. And I've actually, you know, Ken Pargament's work. He's a good friend of mine, and he laughs at me because I've actually got 35 different files that deal with 35 different issues that reviewers have raised about my papers in the past. So they're just comebacks to your sample's too small, your effect size is too small, you know, and I have these things because I've seen them so many times. So, you know, when these come in, I just go, okay, time for number 28, you know, plug it in there, you know, and it, again, it all comes down to experience. But I suggest that you do that. I mean, you know, save, you know, let me come at this a whole other way. A paper, when it's revised, is actually won or lost in the cover letter that you send in with it. When you say, here are the points the reviewers raised, here are my responses to those points. And that's where the whole thing rises and falls, you know, and so when you go through these things, save some of your responses, you know, save them, and you'll use them again because you'll see these things again, chances are. So, in fact, I'm figuring out, you know, it's just funny, to tell you my life course thing. I got to give these files to somebody. I don't want to just die and have them go away. So I'm trying to figure out which one of my students I want to give them to, and just say, here, take these. You know, you'll probably be able to use these, and they're all pretty clearly labeled. So.
Thank you. Yeah, your perspective has been very valuable for not only for this interview, but also for all of us here. So I really appreciate your perspective. So we're gonna end with a couple of questions shifting into public health integration, and then circling back to your work specifically, since we want to hear more from you about your contribution. But first, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on how, you know, thinking about how religion and spirituality is so marginalized in public health in general, the irony behind that. How can we integrate, you know, learning about religion and spirituality better into the curriculum? You know, like thinking about in your experience in academia, like how can we better do that and while the integration?
Yeah, it is tough. It really depends on the flexibility in the school where you wind up. Unfortunately, lots of times when students first finish their PhD and get their first tenure-track job, they're given a lot of the equivalent of the intro classes. Do you know what I mean? The intro to public health or whatever, you know, the real broad general things. And that's going to happen more and more because, you know, a lot of the schools of public health now are moving towards undergraduate education. I know at Michigan, they're making a big push for that now. And I think that's probably a good development. But so the point is, you don't have a whole lot of flexibility, at least initially, although, again, it depends on the school. Because when I was hired at Michigan, they said, what do you want to teach? And I was like, wow, really? You know what I mean? And at the time, I was doing a lot of stress and health. So I said, I want to teach a class on stress and health. They said, okay. You know, so if you find yourself in a place that gives you that kind of flexibility, then do religion and health. But if you don't find yourself in that situation, I think you can still use it as examples. And when you use it as examples in classes, try to extract the broadest possible principles from them so that you say, gee, you know, we're going to see if social relationships are good for health. That's everybody in public health loves that. Well, but let's think about social relationships in a particular context and see if that makes any difference. But the principle is still the same. The social relationships matter. We're just changing the venue a little bit. And you kind of sneak it in that way, you know what I mean? And then you can even raise questions about, is there anything unique about this? And the funny thing is nobody knows if that's true still.
Right.
And nobody's gone and, like I said, taken a sample from the Lions Club and put it up against a congregational thing and said, does it matter? And that would be a great study to do, and it would be easy to defend. So there you go. There's your first grant.
Well, this might be a hard question for you to answer, but what about on the student side, as someone who's still in school, who's learning about this, who really wants to see these topics integrated into other courses? What are our roles in pushing that, making that push, if we're not going to teaching after?
If you're not going to teaching? Well, if you're not going to teaching, it's hard to integrate it into curriculum, I guess. I think the way you do it is through your research, right? If you're not going to go into teaching, then the only other avenue that I'm aware of is research, right?
Yeah.
And so then it gets down to, how do you write the papers that you write? And the answer is, part of the answer is, and you know this, I'm sure, is that when you get to the discussion section, you talk about the so what questions. So, how does this apply? What are we going to do with this? I've shown you that A is related to B. Who cares? Do you know what I mean? And you kind of get it, you can kind of work it in, if you're in a straight research job, then that's the only way I know of how to do it, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're coming up on time, but just really quick, we were interested in, out of all your findings on religion and health, what most surprised you, if you have one?
Surprised me. Yeah. That's a tough question to answer, and it's tough because you say, what surprised you, or what did you like the best? What did you think, was the one that really made the most difference to you? And the one that I think made the most difference to me was, again, it was in the social support arena, but it was, giving is better for your health than receiving.
Yeah.
And I've shown that now with about 5 different data sets, different dependent variables. Mortality was one of them. Is that people that give have lower mortality risk than people who receive. And this is really basic stuff, but it's so cool. You know what I mean? Because it's really, what is it telling you about who we are and how we're put together and what we should be doing with our lives?
Right.
And helping other people is not a bad thing. It really isn't. And in fact, that is going to be in the book I'm writing now. That is what I learned from the philosophy department, is that's called beneficence, and it's helping others. And there's actually a fairly, not a large number of studies, but there's a growing number that consistently show that. So for me, that's a big deal, because again, you think about, what are practical applications? Come on, what do we know about volunteer work through the church? Good thing, good for health, right? Well, this is just another context for giving. So I think that's the one that I like the best. Didn't expect to see it that consistently, I think, is the thing. One of the things that people always ding social and behavioral sciences for is, oh, well, you don't use an experimental design, blah, blah, blah. Well, one way you get around that is to say, but replication is really important.
Yeah.
Where you get not 1, but 10 studies that show the same thing. That adds a lot of credence, a lot of credibility to what you do. So, I don't know, that answer your question?
It did, yes.
Okay.
I know, I feel like a lot of stuff in this field, it makes sense, but it's interesting when you kind of show I know you can't completely show causality, but there's something there, and
Yes.
you're picking up on it. But no, yeah, thank you.
Well,
I guess
well,
huh?
in the end, here's the deal. And this is
Uh-huh.
what I used to tell my doctoral students. I said, you're getting a PhD, right? What does that mean? Doctor of Philosophy. I said, what does the word philosophy mean? Do you know what it means?
Thinking. I don't.
No. Do you know what it means?
Love of knowledge.
Lover of wisdom.
Oh,
Wisdom, yes. Wisdom.
Think about that. Not knowledge, wisdom.
wisdom.
Yes, thank you. Like Sophia, from Sophia, the goddess of wisdom.
Yes.
Yes.
I actually have, you can't see it, it's around the corner on my wall, but I have the Roman goddess of wisdom up on the wall. And that's to remind me of that. Because in the end, empirical science is only going to take you so far. And that's what I used to tell my students. All it does is reflect back to you the quality of your own ideas. That's it. That's what stats do. So if that is what's really going on, then when you get some good ideas, and that comes, it's getting out in the neck of wisdom a little bit, I think. So anyway, there.
Perfect. Just, I guess, to wrap up, do you have any suggestions for students or young professionals that are beginning their careers in public health and might be interested in religion and health topics?
Yeah, I'd say first, these are themes that we touched on already in the hour here. Don't be discouraged.
Right.
You know, you're going to work harder than you ever thought possible. You know, and then the third thing I'd say is something a little bit different, which is this. I remember, you know, my students would say, "Oh God, if I just finish my prelims, everything's going to be all right. If I just finish my dissertation, everything's going to be all right. If I just get a tenure track job, everything's going to be all right. If I just get tenured, everything's going to be all right. If I just make full professor, everything's going to be all right." And I tell them, it's never going to end. Do you know? It's never going to end. So if that's the case, strive to be happy where you are. You know, and I know that's hard too, especially when you're in the middle of the tenure thing. You know, that's, you know, that's an amazing experience. And you know, just keep your eyes on sometimes it's important on the broader things. Remember, lover of wisdom, right?
Right. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that was all our questions.
Good.
This was such a great discussion with you.
Well, it was fun talking to you guys.
I know.
I love students. I love talking to students. They're great. And it's nice to meet you. And religion and health is a small town. So who knows? I mean, if we actually have professional meetings anymore, I hope to bump into you guys sometime there.
Maybe we'll see each other virtually at these meetings.
That's correct. If not that. Okay, well.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for meeting with us.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so
And
much.
thank you guys a lot.
All right.
Bye.